Hey guys, Shivai. So, how to meet an extraterrestrial. So, the reason why I'm being kind of quiet is because I'm in this sacred portal complex site. So this is an old Inca village. And I'm not sure if this was maybe the old temple, because if the camera focuses here, like this rock here, it's kind of built into the house, kind of like a temple, like an altar, like the altar in the church. And they would very often do this. I've noticed this a lot around here, how they would incorporate certain rocks into their structures, like they viewed the rocks as highly sacred. And so just up here, although it's not very clear on the video, this is a portal, I believe, cut out of the mountain, because when you get up close, it's cut out in the same shape as this window here, which you will have seen before in the sacred sites around here from my other videos if you watch them. And that little bubble there is it's all Inca. It's not the more advanced ET stuff, but the Incas were an enlightened race from what I understand. And this is a little temple on top up there, so this whole area is a sacred area. And I can really feel the spirits of the Incas around here, like when the wind blows, it's like it feels like that scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You see it where they open the Ark up and there's all the spirits flying around, but that's kind of a little bit scary. It's not like that. It feels very positive. So let's all pay our respects to the Incas and say thank you for holding the light in our reality for so long and allowing us to make this video here. So today is 4 years to the day since I went on the Yahyel spaceship. So just quickly, I've told this story a lot before. I was in the forest in the UK and I felt like I was having an awakening experience. And then the next thing I know, well, I start to see multidimensionally, and I'm having this huge, great expansion of consciousness, and I shift into like an enlightened state where I can see different parallel timelines, like I guess in my third eye, but it was very bizarre. And then the next thing I know, I'm stood in a different place in the forest. The lighting's all changed. I'm stood in a different position, and there's all these fighter jets flying around my head. And like an instantaneous moment before, it was complete silence. And so like my frequency had gone through the roof. It was like I can't describe the state of consciousness I was in. And a couple of weeks later, I began to recall, like I just remembered like this missing time, like, and I kind of teleported into a different experience. But a couple of weeks later, in meditation, a week or two later, I began to recall being on the Yahyel ship, meeting a 2.5 foot tall ladybug being, like you like the Beatles, the red Beatles, a Mayan being who was wearing like this bubble helmet. He seemed to need to breathe different atmosphere. And so yeah, and so I actually went on a ship and they dropped me off, and like this kind of happens quite a lot, like the more you research this and understand this, like when we actually have the contact experiences, very often we won't remember them. Like the ETs are able to do something to make it so that we don't remember until a point where we're actually ready to begin to integrate it into our consciousness. Because it's so bizarre and it's so intense, it can be like too much to remember all at once, because I believe we find it hard to integrate back into society, because it's such a different reality, a different dimension that they exist in. I remember I felt like I just died. I didn't die, like it wasn't negative, but this closest I can put it to, I died, went into another dimension, then got reinserted back in this reality. Gives you some idea of the intensity of it. So yeah, so this is kind of the way it happens. It's kind of, the experiences are very interdimensional. They're very bizarre. Often we won't remember them. Often a lot of you guys watching this video, you've probably actually very likely had some sort of physical contact experience that you don't actually remember at all. Quite possibly. So you've possibly actually already met an extraterrestrial, but you've kind of agreed from a higher level and orchestrated it with the ETs, or they've orchestrated it, that we won't remember. And apparently the way the ETs gauge when we're ready for more conscious and more aware contact, where we do remember, is by the rate that we begin to remember the contact experiences. And also we do have a lot of contact experiences in the dream time, in the dream state, that we don't remember either. And we might remember snippets, or remember strange memories of being in like a classroom with a being that we can't quite remember what it looks like teaching us, or being in a skyscraper, or being in a shopping centre, or on some building very high in the sky. It's very strange how we remember these experiences and process them. So, how to have your own contact experience. So, the way that is this a good angle? I think it works. So the way that I had my contact experience was that first and foremost, we have to begin to raise our frequency to match their frequency, to match their state of consciousness. It's like, partly, I believe, or perhaps wholly, due to the law of attraction, the idea that like attracts like, and we cannot perceive what we're not the vibration of. This is the idea of like the secret, the manifestation, law of attraction teachings, where a lot of people try to manifest money. And I believe there's a little bit more to it than this, like being aligned with our soul purpose and our higher self and what's relevant for us. But basically, like people like imagine already having the money, so they're in a vibrational state where they feel like they all have lots of money, and then they manifest lots of money. I haven't quite mastered that myself yet, but I kind of got the hang of it, because this is I've been living my life on like trusting in my reality for quite a long time. So it's certainly to a certain extent I have got the hang of it. And so we create our reality vibrationally, we create our reality through what we focus upon, through our beliefs, through our thoughts. And so we've kind of got to match, but it's all about matching the vibrational frequency. Ultimately, this is all about creating a frequency that we emit vibrationally that creates our apparent outer reality, which actually isn't outside of us at all. It's actually within our consciousness. And so we have to we have to become on a similar frequency. And also I think like the ETs, they they don't want to be rude and like not judgmental or anything, but like they kind of view, they must view us as very kind of negatively oriented beings. Like a lot of us still have like selfish tendencies. To them, the idea of like putting yourself first and like only worrying about like paying your own bills and getting money for yourself, and most of us, I mean even myself to a certain extent, they exist in a place where their entire reality is devoted to serving other beings. Like some of the very enlightened beings in our reality, such as Gandhi and Mother Teresa. Like people don't really understand like how they were able to just serve people their entire life. But once you reach a certain level of consciousness, it's the only thing that makes sense. It's probably because like we realize we're all one and the same consciousness and the same being, and it's kind of insanity the way like most humans operate. And also we're like kind of very like low vibration to them, and I don't think it's that pleasant for them to be around us. It's like we're one of the only places in the entirety of creation where things like wars, and it's very rare to be like so negatively oriented to the point where you kill your own species, and you only think about yourself and how you're going to look after yourself, and like you don't really care about people on the other side of the planet who are starving to death. To them that's like completely shocking and like unbelievable that we can just sit down and like watch TV and watch a movie while there's people on the other side of the planet that are like starving to death. So it's kind of like we've got to get on their wavelength. We've got to become more like them, more spiritual, more enlightened, more conscious. So we need to like really raise our frequency, and they're not judgmental against us. They understand that we're just very confused as a civilization. We're very lost. We don't understand that like for a lot of us that we're like spiritual beings, spiritual souls, and we're immortal, and like we live in fear. And I think like the frequency of fear like repels them. Like still most of us to some degree we live in the idea of being driven by fear. you know, like going to a job we don't really prefer because the fear that we won't be able to survive. And like fear is like it's the lowest frequency vibration in creation. And so I think it kind of repels the ETs. Like they don't want to be around fear frequencies. It's the most repugnant, disgusting frequency in the entire universe. And like they evolved beyond fear a long time ago into pure love like consciousness, where they understand that the love frequencies will support them in their reality and support everyone around them as like and co-create the reality they prefer. And so we've got to begin to come out of fear. We've got to begin to do the spiritual work on ourselves to transcend fear. And we don't necessarily need to be completely fearless and completely enlightened to have a contact experience. Perhaps we do to have a fully conscious contact experience and fully recall the experience, to begin to have experiences. You know, I had an experience like in 2009, just a few months after really getting into spirituality. Well, maybe a couple of years, but like a year or so, only a year or so after getting seriously into it. And so because I kind of like, I guess I was so devoted, I completely devoted myself to the spiritual path. And like I still had fears, I was still unsure and like doubts coming up, but like I was completely devoted. And like the reason I actually went on the spiritual path was because after a channeling from Bashar, where Bashar channeled by Darryl Anchor, he actually said if you want to have contact with us, you need to become more enlightened. You need to raise I'm paraphrasing, but you need to become more enlightened. You need to raise your frequency. You need to become more like us. And so that point, I went deeply into the spiritual path and the spiritual journey, and have been pretty much ever since. It only gets deeper, guys. And so yeah, so this is really the most important thing we need to do. I mean, if you look at like Dr. Stephen Greer, when he does his CE5 meditations, you know, it's a deeply sacred process. He does like what he calls, I believe, puja worship. He does a lot of like based on Hindu or Eastern style like spiritual practice. And so yeah, so first and foremost, and the path that like the Yael and Bashar and a lot of the ETs I connect with teach to raising our frequency and discovering more of ourselves and unlocking our soul frequency, our higher self-consciousness, our God self, ultimately, because we're all a part of God, all a part of source consciousness, is a path of following our highest excitement, because it's the physical translation and physical reality of the frequency of our higher mind. And when we follow it, because our greatest spiritual teacher is life, everything that's going on around us. And perhaps a lot of spiritual teachings miss this, but I truly believe this. And when we're following our highest excitement, we're actually going down the path of like being guided by our higher self into a reality where we get all the experiences we need to grow at the most accelerated rates possible for our own growth. So the most direct path, as I understand it, is not just like self-inquiry or sitting in a room saying, I am nothing. It is actually following your highest excitement and living life to the fullest, because then you get all the experiences you need to accelerate yourself into a deeper understanding and expand your consciousness and like learn everything we need to let go of fear, to let go of our attachment to the physical body, to let go of attachment to like physical reality. Because ultimately, like when we're desperately clinging at like things in reality, including people and relationships, it's kind of detrimental to our frequency, because we don't need other people or other things or a bigger house or a bigger car to experience the greatest bliss and joy of creation, because the bliss and joy of creation is what we are, because we are a creation ultimately. And so this is the first step to making extraterrestrial contact, to having a being. I think like it's all about setting the intent, like things like CE5, coherent thought sequencing, ET contact meditation, you can look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about, is great, and it's very helpful, and this is actually what started it all for me. And so this is a great thing, the idea of, I got some videos on my channel, it's what Dr. Stephen Greer teaches, and this started it all for me. This is in 2008, I had a load of UFO sightings back in the UK after doing the CE5 meditations. And so So this stuff is all great, and also like the idea of meditating, doing meditations to tune yourself in to like a deeper state of consciousness, to relax the mind, because ultimately as we relax our mind, the mind, as it is said very much in Eastern teachings, is really the greatest block. The identity and like getting caught in the thought stream of the physical mind is really the greatest block to unlocking our spiritual self and our true nature, our true consciousness as an intrinsic part of source, like a branch that is not cut off from the vine, to quote a great spiritual teacher. And so yeah, like meditation, if we can use meditation to like and practice, it can take years to get the hang of meditation, but you don't. But it's not necessarily going to take years to have a contact experience, because we can get like glimpses and like we can have like breakthroughs, and often things will happen like, I guess, by what's called grace, where God will just like kind of like, I don't know, consciousness, creation, source, God seems to have the ability to give us something that's often called grace, where we get a free ticket to like have a deep spiritual experience for a few hours or a few days or even a few months. And so this can happen by grace if we set the intent. And so yeah, so doing the stuff to like get into a more centered state, to like relax our minds, and like if we can relax our mind, we can like kind of feel into like our spiritual nature. We get a sense that there's something deeper to reality, and in this space we can just like kind of set the intent to connect with the ETs, like especially if you do it. I was thinking, like, I used to have a lot of sightings with a friend here in Pisac when I first came to Peru, and I think the reason we had a lot of sightings together and is because she had like a very honest intent. She just wanted to connect out of fun and like love for the ETs. She was just very excited to connect with the ETs, and it was coming from a very pure place, a very pure state of consciousness. Like there was no ulterior motive. She just wanted to meet them out of love and fun, and I guess to kind of help the planet. And like if you can come from that frequency, they will really respond to that. And so if you can like just get clear in your consciousness, and they pick up on these vibes, I really believe, like just by like getting the intent within your consciousness to begin to connect with their civilization, it's having an effect it's giving off a vibrational resonance that I guess synchronistically attracts them to us, causes them just to be there in the skies. Perhaps they don't even know why they're there. I think we need to show ourselves here at this moment, perhaps as a human who wants to connect with us, or they will pick up on it telepathically. And so yeah, so there's lots of things we can do, like meditating and setting the intent to connect with them, and like doing meditations, and like every night just doing like a little prayer to like say, star family, I want to meet you, extraterrestrial cousins, brothers of my soul, I would like to meet you more and more. And doing the CE5 meditations, doing the coherent thought sequencing protocol as devised by Dr. Stephen Greer of Your Reality. Of Your Reality? Who am I speaking as now? And yeah, but ultimately it's about raising our frequency and like having an honest intent, and like beginning to open our heart and coming into our heart consciousness and the frequency of unconditional love and a frequency of joy, and then we're more matching their frequency. And I think the more we raise in consciousness and the more we become enlightened, the more we make the shift into a fourth density, fifth dimensional consciousness. I think like extraterrestrial contact is a very natural side effect of this shift for as we awaken in consciousness. And begin to shift our reality into a more fourth density state of being. Our consciousness actually expands into a state of oneness where we no longer feel separate from our reality, and that is kind of the dimension that the ETs exist in. And I think this is kind of one of the big secrets and one of the big big secrets, one of the main points that we perhaps can try and understand or begin to understand that will enable us to have more contact is that as we're going through this shift of consciousness into what's called fourth density or the fifth dimension, we're shifting into a reality of oneness where there is no separation, where it becomes a very visceral experience that we are actually connected to all of reality, and reality isn't outside of us. Reality is actually within our consciousness. And so when we're making this shift into the realization that we are the reality we previously thought we existed in, to quote Bashar, we're actually shifting into fifth dimensional reality, fourth density consciousness, where the ETs exist, because they actually exist in this dimension. And I think if we understand that everything exists within our own consciousness, and it's all just a dream, it really is, it's the best way to just see it, it's all just a dream. Like we're dreaming this experience of this physical body on Earth, and the more we understand that it's a dream, and the more we understand that it's actually just happening within our consciousness, we can perhaps kind of see that like in the past we've been dreaming the dream of third density reality, 3D reality, and now we're going into a different phase of the dream, which is fourth density or fifth dimensional reality. And in this phase of the dream, we're existing in a dimension of consciousness. The best way I can explain is very hard to explain, where the ETs exist. The ETs exist in this dimension. We're shifting into a new dimensional experience of the dream of planet Earth. That is 5D, fourth density. And in this dimension that we're shifting into, within our own consciousness, this is the dimension that the extraterrestrials exist in. And we're just going to see that they're just here, and they've been here all along. But they were on a slightly different, it's like a phase shift. And the word phase shift comes into mind. We need to make a phase shift. A phase shift, and we'll see that the ETs have been here all along. And they've just been waiting for us to snap out of our dream. You know, where we're all stuck in the mind and walking down on our phones with our heads down, like, oh look, food, nom nom nom. Oh look, woman, sex. We're just completely stuck in our heads and lost in our heads, and then we start to wake up into 5D. It's like, whoa, holy crap, look, there's actually a sky up there I didn't see because I've been stuck in my phone for so long. And like as we become more present and as we become more conscious, we're entering into 5D reality, and the ETs are here. They're like waiting for us. It's just we're shifting into a new experience of the dream in a new dimension where the ETs have always existed and always will, I believe, in some way or some form. And so this is why the most important thing we need to do to meet an extraterrestrial being, and more importantly, begin to act as ambassadors, begin to act as conduits, if that's your resonance, channels, begin to act as interfaces, intermediaries between their dimension and our dimension, to introduce them to the greater humanity as a whole, so we can begin to work together to bring new technologies into this reality, free energy when they sense we're ready for it, healing technologies. Like, they're so much more advanced than us, it's completely unimaginable. It's like us compared to like cavemen, like going, "Ooh, look, we made fire, we can burn flesh and eat." Like, they're probably more advanced than the comparison between like our iPhones and our quantum computers relative to like being cavemen. It's like that kind of jump. So as exciting it is to meet an extraterrestrial ourselves, I think we should begin to try and see like them, and see that we are one consciousness, one entity, like Gaia, planet Earth, the planetary consciousness. We are one evolving entity. We are one evolving being. We are an evolving planetary consciousness, as the Incas very much understood. Like there's rumours that the Incas were a fully enlightened civilization, and I believe that. I feel that energy, and that's probably why I was drawn here today, to get into the frequency. And seeing ourselves as, because they see themselves as collective civilizations, like the Yael collective consciousness, the Pleiadian collective, the Arcturan collective. Like they view themselves as one evolving civilization, one evolving planetary consciousness. And so if we can begin to see ourselves as one evolving planetary consciousness, and yes, it's fun to meet an extraterrestrial. Yes, it's completely amazing. Yes, it's the most blissful experience you'll probably ever experience in your life. But like, if we can just kind of tune in to our hearts and tune in to the idea that we are one planetary consciousness evolving, and like that is a blissful feeling in itself, and like it perhaps more than compensates for the idea that we have to put our own perspectives or our own needs to the side for a while for the benefit of the greater whole. It'll be more than worth it in the end, guys. So yeah, so raising our frequency, following our excitement, doing our spiritual practice, whatever spiritual practice or spiritual path or spiritual tradition you're drawn to, will all benefit. Beginning to understand that we are one consciousness, we are one planetary being evolving. Boom, 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 boom. Bum 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 bum. Hopefully that made sense to some of you. More energetically sensitive. And this is the way forward, guys. And this is how we can meet an extraterrestrial. And this is how we can introduce extraterrestrials to humanity and be parts of the shift into fourth density, the fifth dimension, and the new Earth. So we need to become more like them. We need to understand we're a unity consciousness. We need to become more heart-centered in unconditional love, compassion, more like the Dalai Lama, good example. And so I think you get the idea, guys. So Shivai from me, Shivai from the ETs, Shivai from the sacred rock. I think the Incas would be very grateful, the Inca spirits that are swirling around me. Whoosh. Shivai from the portal, Shivai from the temple, Shivai from the Andes, Shivai from the sky, and Shivai from planetary being. Okay guys, I'll see you all in another now. Peace, love and light. And let's make the shift into unity consciousness together. Let's make the shift into 5D together. And can you feel the oneness in the air? It's kind of like being on the ship, actually. It's interesting, 4 years to the day. Even the sun is like speaking to us. Oh, peace, love, and light. Exciting times, guys. 2023 is coming. The window of contact. Connect to your heart, and you'll be part of the game. Shivai.